Buenas, buenas. I'm Vanessa. Welcome to Chicklit, a podcast where I share my unfiltered reviews of books that I think women, Latinas, and millennials would enjoy. Just a heads up, as always, there are spoilers in this episode. Please subscribe on Spotify and YouTube and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Chicklit Podcast. And enjoy today's episode. So today's episode is on the book called Quit Like a Woman, The Radical Choice to Not Drink in a Culture Obsessed with Alcohol. There are 325 pages in paperback. Yes, I read this book in paperback. I generally read my books through the Libby app, and so that's like connected to your library card. And so I knew that Quit Like a Woman was not at my local library. It was not on the Libby app. So last week when my friend Jane organized a trip into the city, we went to Green Lights bookstore in Brooklyn, and I went with Jane, our friend Tanya, my cousin Tati, and Tati's daughter Alejandra. We had such a great time, but while we were there, I saw the book and I was like, okay, it's not on Libby, so I'm not gonna be able to read it, so let me get the book. Initially, what made me want to read that book was Chrissy Teigen was talking about it maybe 2-3 years ago because she's not a drinker anymore, and I kind of spoke to me because I've never been a big drinker. The most I'll have is like 4 or 5 drinks. I've gotten drunk like on my birthday or New Year's or maybe like at a concert or something, but I'm generally like not binge drinking. I'm not a big drinker. Even when I was in college and you'd see all these girls like drunk, passed out, slurring their words, being carried around, like I've never, like, first of all, it's unsafe. That's one of the reasons why I don't like to get drunk, because it's unsafe for me to be wasted. And I also don't like seeing other people drunk because it makes me think like, how sad are you that you have to check out of reality and be blackout drunk? So the reason why I wanted to read this book when Chrissy Teigen was talking about it was to kind of like really hone in on my reasons for not drinking. So if any of this resonates with you, I feel like you'll like it. And even if you feel like you love alcohol, I definitely think that you should still listen to this podcast because it's concerning. But the book's genres are nonfiction, self-help, feminism, memoir, health, and mental health. I'm obsessed with these genres. The first ever self-help book I read was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I also read Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. Both books were like helpful and a lot easier to read than I think the average self-help like nonfiction books. So if you're looking for, other nonfiction self-help books, those are it. The writing style of today's book is very much self-help and nonfiction by a way of memoir and feminism and mental health. The author gives information about alcohol and shares her experiences as an example or a way to talk about the important like alcohol facts that, she shares. The author is Holly Whitaker. This is the only book that she's ever written, and she does have a podcast. On her website, she shares, I'm a person in long-term recovery who thinks that the key to everything we're looking for individually and societally comes from the work we do on ourselves. Everything starts when we stop running. Everyone deserves the opportunity to engage in recovery. Everyone. I find life to be excruciating, but I'm thrilled by the mystery of it, the way it never stays the same. I swing left. Equity, equality, and social justice are core to me and core to the alleviation of my addiction. I believe all humans are inherently and basically good. Love ethic and nonviolence are my North Stars. I do not have all the answers, and the more I learn, the more I'm convinced I know nothing at all. My work is personal and subjective, and how I make sense of the world and my place in it. I don't know you, but I care about you. You deserve a soft place to land. It's my sincerest hope that my work is of benefit. And I love that. I want to be Holly when I grow up. I totally agree that everyone, or a very vast majority of the people on earth, are good. And I do believe that everyone deserves a soft place to land. They deserve to be safe and feel seen. And that's how people grow, and that's how people do good, when they're able to feel safe and seen and supported. So I love that. I loved everything that she shared. I'm actually going to start off today's, summary with a chisme, because there's a lot of information and it's jarring and it has me stressed out. So I just want to share all of all of the facts and info from the jump. So alcohol is actually ethanol, like the alcohol that we drink, it's ethanol. It's a neurotoxic psychoactive drug and a recreational drug. It's volatile, flammable, used as an antiseptic, solvent in medical wipes and antibiotic material formulas because it kills organisms' proteins found in paints, markers, perfumes, and deodorant. It's also an engine fuel, and we just drink that. So that's super concerning. It's linked to 7 cancers, to different diseases, different chronic conditions. And because alcohol is a depressant, when we're recovering from alcohol consumption, it causes the opposite effect, and it actually increases your anxiety. And consuming alcohol, any amount of alcohol, disrupts nearly every single bodily system and organ. It disrupts sleep so much that your brain doesn't rejuvenate. It increases stress, depression, irritability, appetite, weight gain, and memory loss. It takes 3 to 4 days to remove alcohol from your system. Your liver focuses on cleaning alcohol out of your system, and so it ignores all the other toxins to the point in which they stay in your body. So losing weight becomes harder. You get acne, it disrupts your hormones, your menstrual cycle, it increases bloating and headaches, and it produces bad breath and body odor. You get redness because your body's trying to excrete the alcohol, so it just goes through your blood. It disrupts your endocrine function, so it raises estrogen levels and depletes testosterone, and it artificially stimulates the flight or fight response. It increases fatigue and lowers sex drive. And mind you, I'm like halfway done with the list right now. There are more than 100 studies that confirm the link between drinking alcohol and breast cancer. So women who drink 3 alcoholic beverages a week have a 15% higher risk of breast cancer. And that risk is increased by 10% for each additional drink women have daily. So drinking increases your chance of mouth, throat, esophagus, voice box, liver, colon, and rectum cancer. So any organ that comes in contact with alcohol, you increase your chance of getting cancer there. Drinking alcohol causes premature aging. It causes a loss of collagen and elasticity. It depletes minerals and nutrients and antioxidants that counter aging damage. It also lowers the immune system, so when you're sick, you're not able to fight off illness as well as if you were a non-drinker. And so that's just from a body health standpoint. And so now I'm going to share some facts on how it affects women and victims of domestic violence or sexual abuse, which is also extremely concerning. Half of all sexual assaults involve alcohol consumption. So up to 90% of all college campus rape involves alcohol. 2/3 of all reported cases of intimate partner violence involve alcohol. 40% of all violent crimes involve alcohol. Women who drink before age 18 are 8 times likely to experience physical assault, and alcohol is responsible for over 3 million deaths worldwide. And just for some context, we all know about the opioid epidemic. Opioids kill over 600,000 people worldwide a year, and so there's an epidemic for opioids, and that epidemic that is surfaced, but there's no epidemic and there's no concern for the 3 million people who die worldwide from alcohol. Addiction is a response to something. So alcohol initially gives us more dopamine than sex, chocolate, or coffee. When our brain uses alcohol to keep getting that hit of dopamine. And then all the other things that used to give us dopamine, they still do, but it's not as strong as they once did. And it doesn't compare to the amount of dopamine we get from drinking alcohol initially. So what we do is we get addicted to the dopamine that alcohol gives us. And so the solution that Holly proposes is, and I want to be careful, not to infantilize this or reduce all of this information just to a 20-minute podcast. So if you want to find more details, I definitely suggest reading the book. It's over 300 pages and it goes into great detail. So please read the book if you find, I'm not giving a comprehensive enough review. It's like, yeah, it's hard to summarize 300 pages in 20 minutes. Okay. So just keep that in mind when moving forward. But the solution that Holly poses in the book is that we need to create a life that we don't need to escape and address the root causes that give us a reason to want to escape. It means getting into our physical health, finding a good therapist, ending or leaving abusive relationships, learning to re-inhabit our bodies, changing our negative thought patterns, building support networks, finding meaning and connecting to something greater than ourselves, and so on. So you have to start to love the like shitty version of yourself and tell yourself, it's okay, nothing's wrong with you, you're not fucked up like beyond repair. You have to console yourself and make yourself feel better. If you want, you can look up Integral Map by Ken Wilber. You basically need to nurture 4 areas of yourself in this map. You have to nurture the I, which is the internal part of yourself, the we, which is the shared meaning, for example, your community, your physical body, and also the environmental structures around you. She also says that breath work is also super important. You can last months without food, a few days without water, but only about a few minutes, without breathing. So it's really important when you're trying to recover from something or to get through something that's difficult, like your addiction to alcohol, to focus on your breathing. I struggled with pelvic floor pain for a lot of my adult life due to negative sexual experiences and how my body holds stress. And so I've gone to pelvic floor therapy, 2 different therapists. I've seen a mental health therapist for the pelvic floor pain, and I've taken a group therapy educational course. And in all of these settings, we at one point or another focus on breath work. So controlling your breathing and your nervous system is very healing, and it's important for a healthy, happy body and brain and mindset. And so in order to get into how alcohol became so ingrained in our society, we have to first mention cigarettes. Cigarette smoking and alcohol go hand in hand. Cigarette companies marketed women and linked cigarettes to the women liberation movement in the 20s. And they used cigarettes as a sign of equality because at the time, men were the only ones that smoked. So it's like, women can do the same thing, so we're going to go outside and smoke cigarettes because we're equals. And it worked. And later on, when alcohol was trying to think like, how can we get women to drink? It's like, they marketed to the women's like empowerment movement. Like, we'll do the same. So they just copied what cigarette companies did. And this last little like fact portion, I do need to mention how, the alcohol companies, I believe that Holly mentioned there are 16 very large alcohol companies that, take up most of the market, but they target low middle income countries, aka emerging markets in Africa, Asia, and South America. And in recent years, we've seen a rise in alcohol consumption, distribution, marketing, and public relations, as well as a surge of alcohol addiction and alcohol related death. And so what's dangerous about that in a lot of those countries, not that the US has good recovery programs, but when you are marketing in these emerging markets, they don't have these social programs to help people. They don't have the recovery resources, and these companies are just making money off of us being addicted to it. So it's super dangerous. Alcohol culture is ingrained in our society. Moms have mommy juice. They're pumping and dumping. It's very normalized. Celebrities are being sponsored by alcohol companies, and they're doing collaborations with alcohol with their products. Movies where a group of overworked and underappreciated moms, it's very normalized that they're just out getting drunk. They claim that they're due a reward by getting, shit-faced. I won't name the movie, but you can figure it out. There are wine and yoga classes, which just blows my mind. Just a few weeks ago, a friend of mine sent me something that was like, they're sewing wine night at a local bar, and it's like, that seems dangerous. There's also like pro wine onesies for babies, wine wipes for your teeth. When you're drinking, your teeth get all red. There's like a wine glass holder necklace, so when your arms are so tired, you like are wearing your wine around your neck. It's like, you can't even hold the glass. Like, this is literally like alcoholism. It's just everywhere. It's just, we could go on, and I'm sure you could list a long list of alcohol related products as well. But now that we're kind of get through these stats and getting through that background information, let's get into lo bueno. And so I'm obsessed with the fact that Holly shares that there's she shares all these solutions, and then she also is sharing misconceptions. And the misconception is what it means to be alcoholic. So we think alcoholism means if you have X amount of drinks a week, then you're an alcoholic. And I've talking to a few people about this book and this episode. A few people have said, I don't have 5 glasses of alcohol a week, so I'm not an alcoholic. And that's not what an alcoholic means. Alcoholism means that if when you're drinking, it negatively impacts your life and you continue to drink anyways. That's how you know that you're addicted. If you spend so much money, you don't have any money, but you're still going out every Friday and Saturday night, that's how you know that you're addicted. And so there are several theories of addiction. And on page 96, Holly says, these 5 theories assert that addiction is a pure choice. It's an attempt to soothe pain. It's an unavoidable sickness and can't be cured. It's a learned behavior that can be unlearned, and a response to being reduced to chattel in a capitalist society where you just have to wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, wake up, go to work, go home, eat dinner. And it's just this cycle of, that's what she's referring to in this chattel in capitalist society. And so all of these theories were created by white men. AA was also created by and for white men in the middle class in the 30s. And so that's one of the goals through the program is reducing your ego. And it's concerning because times have changed. Men are no longer the only ones who are addicted to alcohol. If there's a woman enrolled in AA, what does being a white middle-class man in the 30s have to do with being a woman in recovery in 2023? That, it's just a huge gap. Or what about people of the global majority attending AA meetings? They're not being properly considered when making AA. 73% of treatment facilities use AA strategies. The criminal justice system makes people attend meetings, and doctors, recommend them if you tell them you have a drinking problem, but it wasn't made for women or people of the global majority. So it just can't be helpful to people who aren't of that demographic. It's not the best program. And so what Holly does is she describes a possible solution that is the feminine centric recovery framework, and it assumes that you're already whole and perfect. It's not you who's broken. It's very much of a standpoint of you're mothering yourself, you're growing your own agency, you're growing a skill set, you're setting boundaries, you're embracing the world, you're cultivating a sense of power and self-trust, and you try everything and show up empty. You're allowed to change, you're allowed to teach people how to treat you. You belong to yourself, and you act like a kid. You create, you take risks, you be yourself. All such powerful things that I wish we had, the time to dive into, each and every single one of these topics. But in the book, Holly does go into detail on all of those, things that I just shared and gives more insight on each one. But at the end of the day, the point is that you do what works for you, whether it's one day at a time, deciding every day, I'm not going to drink today. And then tomorrow, I'm not going to drink today. And then the next day, I'm not going to drink today. Or she also proposes that you just decide one day that you're never going to drink again. And then you never question that decision again. You're like, no, I decided, so that's why. And you just don't ever explore it again. You just y punto. That's it. And that's what I did. On page 79, on Thursday, October 26, 2023, I decided that I'm never going to have a drink again, and I never will. I just don't plan on questioning the decision. And if people ask why, I will say something along the lines of, I haven't worked this one out, but I'll say something along the lines of, I stopped drinking because it's unhealthy, expensive, and harmful to women and marginalized communities. And people are going to be upset. There's, Holly talks about in the book how there's this societal contract that we all agree that drinking is normal. So when you go into a room and you're not drinking, or if you say, that you're an alcoholic, it's like you're the oddball out, when really alcohol is an addictive substance. And if it's negatively impacting you, you should probably not drink anymore. It's not you. Alcohol is really terrible. So we should just not do that. But in the book, Holly describes alcohol as being the issue and not a gene mutation of alcoholism. Another important part is that she shares that her drinking shape-shifted as she evolved through life. It's just part of the society, a way to fit in. As an adult, wine knowledge is a symbol of status. And as kids, it's a way to be cool and fit in. So she has an issue with the term alcoholic and alcoholism, and she wants them to go away. And she says that these terms assert that it's normal to consume an addictive substance with ease and abnormal to not be able to, which is not true. It's an addictive substance. Like, if you can't control your consumption of alcohol, it's like, yeah, because it's an addictive thing. It's not that you're messed up. It's alcohol. You know, alcohol and alcoholics, those terms and using those terms, they prevent all drinkers from observing their own relationship with alcohol and provide a false sense of security. They suggest the problem lies on the extreme end of the spectrum, and that's not where the majority of the problem with drinking lies. It comes, you know, way before then, before you get your DUI, before, you know, you get a divorce. There's a lot that happens before then. And so if we just wait until one day we're a 10 on the spectrum, if we would have paid attention at 5, we could have avoided all of the pain to get to that point, you know? And so she does not like using these terms because then you only think about the extremes. These terms scare people because of the stigma that comes with that title. If you're an alcoholic, you're largely self-diagnosed, and that's an area that society lacks. As a society, we need to be better at tracking and looking out for these things. And honestly, like, talking about it and reading this book and doing this podcast is how I'm playing a role in it. I want people to question, is alcohol negatively affecting me now if you're at a 5, so that we don't have to wait for you to be at a 10 and your life is ruined. Let's address it now. Alcohol is the only drug in the world where when you stop taking it, you're seen as having a disease. You know, if you were addicted, you know, to Coke or something and you stop, it's like, yeah, wow, Coke is like the terrible thing. But if you are addicted to alcohol and you stop, it's like, oh yeah, you can't drink, you're not a good drinker, you're an alcoholic. It's like, it's a very different mindset. And one of the last, you know, things that she shares is that by using the words alcoholic and alcoholism, it kind of absolves alcohol companies of their role in mass producing and marketing and selling, you know, this dangerous drug, because they need to be responsible for knowing that they're selling a dangerous drug, just like pharmaceutical companies need to be held accountable for the opioid epidemic. Alcohol companies need to be held accountable for the way that it negatively affects all of our lives. And so, yeah, let's get into lo malo. One of the things I don't like is when she talks about the money spent on ads in the 30s. She says that they spent $50 million and compares that to today's $2.3 billion. But the problem is, like, 70 years ago, $50 million may have been $2.3 million. Like, she's trying to say that there's a huge uprise in marketing, and I just don't know if it's relative or not. And maybe she did take inflation into account. I just didn't see that, and she didn't talk about that. And so I wish that I would be able to better understand some of the statistics or facts. I also think that lo malo is that reading nonfiction can get really redundant and overwhelming with all of the information that's shared. And I found myself wishing that the book was a little shorter. You know, I think that it's just one of the things with nonfiction books where it's just they repeat the same statistic or the same overall point several times and they refer to it, and it just gets really redundant. It's like maybe once or twice, and you know, I didn't keep track. I didn't want to shit on the book, but I did find, 65% through the book, I was like, I understand the point. I just don't know if I needed 325 pages for it. Again, that's just my opinion. If you may have read the book and find every single page to be helpful and new and whatever, but I feel like less is more a little bit especially when you're talking about heavy topics. And yeah, so that concludes today's episode. Next week's episode is going to be on the book Verity by Colleen Hoover. So please be sure to watch or listen to that episode next week. And if you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify and YouTube and leave a review. You can also follow me on social media at Chicklit Podcast. And remember, if you have any book recommendations, send them my way. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Have a good day. Bye.